I'm Josh Larky. This is the Dominator. Today we are going to be streaming a Greyhound draft on Underdog Fantasy. This is $35 single entry. You only have one shot if you are playing on Underdog Fantasy. It's around 9,000 people in the tournament. Top prize, $30,000. And I'm going to be with you the whole way with the picks. I'll keep glancing over at my other screen where we've got the draft streamed. And I think it's almost time to pick. So let me throw this in here. I think my favorite part about draft streaming has to be multitasking between doing a podcast, making my picks, making sure that anyone in the chat is satisfied with the picks. And we're about to be on the clock. It looks like we drew the fourth pick. This is actually one of my favorite ranges. We have CeeDee Lamb off the board at 101, McCaffrey off the board at 102. Usually McCaffrey goes first, but nothing too crazy here. I often take Jamar Chase 104 because Hill usually goes 103. It looks like Chase went 103. I've tried to be a little bit underweight on Tyreek Hill this year. He's turning 30. And I've tried to be overweight on Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall. We are going to make this fun. We are going to start off with a running back. We are going to take Bijan Robinson. Now, I was actually talking with my good friend of Football Guys, Dave Kluge, yesterday. We went on a hike together, and I was discussing why I firmly believe, even though Christian McCaffrey goes 101, that's fine. I'm going to take him there. We need 1 week upside with these underdog tournaments, and I truly think that McCaffrey can score 35, 40 fantasy points in half PPR in 1 week, and your team goes bonkers and you win all the money. But if we're thinking over a season-long perspective, guys who also have 1 week game-breaking upside in fantasy, but have a better profile, I have to think Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall have better profiles this year than Christian McCaffrey. And you might say, Josh, that's crazy. That's crazy. Well, let me explain. So Christian McCaffrey's 28. We know that running back targets are partially how good the running back is and partially how good the receivers are. The 49ers have Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings at receiver. They also have George Kittle at tight end. There's so much going on there that I don't think Christian McCaffrey is necessarily in play to lead the NFL in receptions this year like he has in past seasons. At running back, he didn't do it last year either. McCaffrey was third among all running backs in receptions last season. I think Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson are set up better. They're much younger than the 28-year-old McCaffrey. And they are both playing with older veteran quarterbacks coming off Achilles tears. Checkdowns are going to be plentiful. You do not want Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins taking contact. But I think both these offenses have top 10, if not top 5 potential with the Falcons and the Jets. So let's just go ahead and take Bijan Robinson at pick 4. It's single entry. I only have one chance. And in this one chance, we are relying on Bijan Robinson. Let me go back to the draft board. Let's see if there's any interesting picks here. I'm not going to mention every single pick. I think everyone out there should just draft on Underdog Fantasy. The promo code is Underworld for those of you out there that want the 50% deposit match up to $250 when you sign up. Anyway, as I'm looking, generally when I go running back with my first pick, I usually limit myself to one more running back in the first 4 to 5 rounds. I've taken 3 running backs through 5 rounds once or twice and then kind of waited on running back until the very, very, very end of the draft. But what I've seen on Underdog is that the running backs go, or the receivers go really quickly. I'm up in 3 picks. We're going to scroll down. This is the range of receiver that you don't want to get stuck in, right around here. ADP, there we go. ADP 97, Cortland Sutton. 99, Curtis Samuel. 102, Tyler Lockett. 107, Mike Williams. 110, Romeo Doubs. 111, Khalil Shakir. Pick 113, Rashid Shaheed. If you're getting your wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 in this range, you've probably already lost. We want to avoid that. And it looks like at pick 21, we've got Nico Collins right there, fresh off of his 3-year I believe it was 72 million. Yeah, $72 million extension. And we're going to take Nico Collins there. So now we've got Bijan Robinson. We've got Nico Collins. It's nice and balanced. I've seen a lot of hatred for Nico Collins. I post a lot of my teams from Underdog Fantasy onto Twitter. My Twitter is at JLarkyTweets. I get a lot of hate from people when I take Nico Collins in the second round. And to that, I don't understand what the issue is. Nico Collins is phenomenal. All he does is score fantasy points. We're going to go to player profiler. So 2 years ago, Nico Collins, wow, this is serious multitasking. We're streaming a draft. I'm Google searching player profiler. I deserve a medal. Anyway, 2 years ago, Nico Collins and Devonta Smith were both targeted on 25% of their routes. And I said, isn't that interesting? Devonta Smith's probably a better receiver, but it's interesting that Nico Collins is bigger and faster and is getting targeted at the same rate. And sure enough, last year, he then breaks out in a major way. I've got his fantasy game logs pulled up from last year, which we'll check out in just a second. But it's time to make another pick. So we're going to be on the clock at the 3-4. That's pick 28. I'm really looking at Devon Achane right now, who just went. Thank you, stream, for sniping me. I've been taking very little Kyren Williams. I think anyone who's listened to my streams recently knows that. Right now, I'm looking at DJ Moore and Derrick Henry. These are kind of the two guys that I've taken a lot of right here. I think all these Bears players are going to have a touchdown upside in this offense. Oh, my God. Do we go DJ? You know what, folks? At the last second, he pivots. He takes Derrick Henry because we took Nico Collins in round 2. And the Texans and the Ravens play in week 17 when all the money is won. That could be a very, very high-scoring affair. Derrick Henry struggled versus the Texans last year. 2 terrible rushing games. Part of that might have been the Titans' putrid offensive line. But his 5 games before that, he had at least 125 rushing yards in each of those last 5 games against the Texans. And he hit 200 rushing yards in 4 of those 5 games. Different team now. He's on the Ravens. If anything, it's a better environment. The Houston run defense has gotten better as well. But I'm still inclined to think that Derrick Henry has game-breaking upside, especially in half PPR. We know he can get 150 yards, 2-3 touchdowns any given week. Now, let's go back to wow, it's going to be hard to remember my here we go. I'm going to go back to player profiler. Nobody can see this. That makes for great streaming when they can't see the game logs. I'm just going to list some of these Nico Collins game logs from last year. He had a wide receiver 5 weekly finish in week 2. Wide receiver 3 finish in week 4. Wide receiver 13 finish in week 9. Wide receiver 5 finish in week 12. Wide receiver 3 finish in week 13. Wide receiver 3 finish in week 18. Clearly, Nico Collins does nothing other than give you top 5 fantasy finishes. That is exactly what we want in best ball. I know Stephon Diggs is there, but Stephon Diggs is 30. He's never played with Stroud. Tank Dell is small. He's coming off the broken leg. I love Tank Dell as well, but let's not act like the aging veteran Stephon Diggs and the 160-pound Tank Dell are immune from getting injured. And if one of them gets injured, it's just absolute fantasy bananas for Nico Collins. CJ Stroud had the best rookie season by an NFL quarterback ever this past year. I actually dropped my win total predictions for all 32 teams. I walk you through the standings predictions, all 272 games that will be played. I predict the win probability for every single team in every game. You can check out that matrix. It's all on my Twitter. It's my pinned tweet at JLarkyTweets. Make sure you're checking that out. I think it's a very valuable exercise to understand how I view teams, and you can even do it yourself because I'm transparent about my process. You can create the exact same win-loss predictions if you'd like. And right now, I have the Texans. I'm going to keep this quiet. I have the Texans as my 4th best NFL team. I have the Chiefs as the best NFL team. The Niners as the 2nd best team. The Ravens as the 3rd best team. Those are my tier 1 teams. In tier 2, the first team in tier 2 is the Houston Texans. I understand people when they say the Houston Texans are so expensive. I can't, Josh, I can't invest in a team that's that expensive on Underdog. And to that I say, well, can you envision the Texans offense scoring the most fantasy points among any team in a week. Can you imagine them dropping having 5 or 6 offensive touchdowns and being the best fantasy team for a given week? If so, they are not too expensive. You should draft them. If that Texans-Ravens game is a 45-38 affair, and you decided arbitrarily that you thought the Texans were too expensive, well, you're not going to make any money on Underdog this year. And I don't want that possibility. I will be taking the Texans. We're about to be back on the clock, folks. We've got Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry at running back. We've got Nico Collins at receiver. I think my receivers are good. Let's see. I'm going to pick again at 52. CJ Stroud's ADP is 53. I'm on a stream, so there's going to be some jerk out there who tries to snipe me. Folks, we're taking Tank Dell right now at pick 45. His ADP was 39. We're getting him half a round later. We have Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, Nico Collins, Tank Dell. Will the stream let me stack CJ Stroud, Rick's Chicago Spartan, and Jay Bixler have still yet to make picks. Jay Bixler just took Mahomes. I don't think he's going to take Stroud as well. We just have Rick's and Chicago Spartan. It's time. It's time to panic. It's time to panic. This is why I struggle sometimes when streaming drafts, is I get too emotional. Only on the stream. If I'm drafting alone in my apartment, no emotions. But the second I'm streaming, the pressure's on. I know people watch this, and I know that people like to snipe. We've got 3 picks left. Jay Bixler is not a factor. He just took Mahomes. Chicago Spartan took Josh Allen, so we're good there. Ricks is on the clock. Ricks has Kincaid, Evans. Oh, my God. Ricks has Stephon Diggs. Folks, it's going to happen. Ricks has Stephon Diggs. He's going to take CJ Stroud. Oh, my. It's time to rage quit the stream. I see Gerard Dean in the chat telling me to sweat it out, brother. Thanks for the good words. That meant nothing. That meant nothing. We lost him. It's all right. We're going to make a full recovery. Right now, I'm looking at Christian Kirk. I'm looking at Anthony Richardson. I think Richardson has QB1 overall upside this year. I think Christian Kirk is very good. We're just going to get the quarterback. I really like Anthony Richardson. I hate life, but I like Anthony Richardson. Folks, this team has a nice little week 17 correlation between Derrick Henry, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. And then we have Bijan Robinson and Anthony Richardson floating around. Oh boy. So what I do like about Anthony Richardson, let me go back to player profiler for a second. All right. Let's see if this worked. We've got player profiler up. Let's go to Anthony Richardson because I think it illustrates on player profiler what his upside is. We got 14 picks till I get to pick again. Great. We got a little time. So Richardson, when we look at his game logs, you can see quarterback 1 overall upside. Now, what I'm looking at is, let's zoom in on the fantasy points. We can look at the attempts. So we have 37 attempts, 10 attempts, 25 attempts, 12 pass attempts. Basically 2 full games and 2 half games. In his 2 full games, he was the quarterback 4, 22 fantasy points, and the quarterback 2, 29.5 fantasy points. In his half games, he had 18 fantasy points and then 4. So he was basically on pace for a top 3 quarterback finish in one of those weeks, and then the other week was just terrible. But basically, we were essentially pacing for 3 top 4 fantasy finishes, 3 finishes that were elite out of his 4 games. That is just insane. That is why we like Anthony Richardson. I think the upside is just enormous. If he stays healthy, he's going to break fantasy. And I think it makes sense why you wouldn't want to overexpose yourself to Anthony Richardson just because he could get hurt. We saw him suffer from 3 different injuries in parts of 4 games last year. That being said, he's got a good supporting cast. He's got Jonathan Taylor in the backfield, keeps defenses honest. The offensive line is solid. Michael Pittman just got extended. He's pretty good. They brought in wide receiver Adonai Mitchell, who's going to stretch the field. He's going to be a red zone threat. They took him in the 2nd round. They have Josh Downs, who had nearly 70 catches last year as a rookie slot receiver. I am very, very high on this Colts offense. I think it has top 10 potential. I want Anthony Richardson. And I think one thing to note is it could happen this year. Some people out there might be like, Josh, can you give me an example of a quarterback who's mobile, who flashed in year one, but ultimately didn't do much, and then was the overall quarterback one and broke fantasy in year two? And to that, I would say Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson played part of a season as a rookie in 2018. And then 2019, he won MVP. He was the fantasy MVP. He had one of the greatest fantasy football seasons ever that year. And I think Richardson could do the same. So you know what? Thank you. Thank you, Ricks, for sniping CJ Stroud for me and taking him early to stack with Stephon Diggs, the Texans wide receiver 3. I'm very happy that you did that. I didn't want the guy anyway. We're on the clock again. We've got Collins and Dell. I want to take another receiver here. Oh, Dunze's tempting. We could always grab a little Caleb Williams later. Lad McConkey's another guy that I like. I'm going to queue up Chris Godwin unless the chat says anything to talk me out of it. I've started to we're just going to pull the trigger. So I've really started to warm up to Chris Godwin. Hollywood Brown had been slipping. He went the pick before me at pick 68. I had the 6'9", which is pick 69. That's ultra nice. Anyway, I would have preferred Marquise Brown, but he went off the board. Chris Godwin's going to be moving back into the slot full time. The new offensive coordinator of the Buccaneers, I believe was it yesterday? Let me see if I can get let me see player news when I'm live. I believe it was yesterday, though, that the Buccaneers offensive coordinator basically said, and I mean, this just makes you full hard on. Chris Godwin will be in the Cooper Kupp role in this offense. Now, I don't think he's Cooper Kupp. He's not as good as Cooper Kupp, but he's a big slot receiver who's dangerous after the catch and can run adequate enough routes. So if the offensive coordinator in any way thinks this guy has potential, I'm excited. Mike Evans is in his 30s. I think Mike Evans is awesome. I've been drafting him some in these underdog drafts. That being said, he's in his 30s. He could get hurt. The aging curve could just catch up to him. And I think he makes for a really, really good pick, Chris Godwin, right now. His ADP 70. I took him 69. We're okay with it. We've got Anthony Richardson, Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry. And then we got Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Chris Godwin. Alex P. Keaton is in the chat. Only Psycho stream in light mode. Have to go grab my sunglasses. Be right back. That is hilarious. Very, very funny. We are back on the clock. I don't have a tight end yet. I've been taking a lot of Evan Engram. I think he's very, very interesting. Could set up a little backdoor Trevor Lawrence stack along with Anthony Richardson. What I like about Evan Engram is that he had 114 catches last year. Calvin Ridley's gone. They replaced him with Brian Thomas. Brian Thomas seems a little bit expensive. So does Keon Coleman. I've taken them some. They're rookies, but they're very expensive. We're just going to go ahead and take Evan Engram. I think if you, chat, don't snipe me, but if you really want these receivers with good draft capital, I think there's two other guys that I like a lot more than Keon Coleman and Brian Thomas, at least for best ball. And if we scroll down, this is the range. This is my favorite. I have so much exposure. I'll probably post my exposures on Twitter at JLarky Tweets later on. I have so much exposure to Xavier Legette and Ricky Pearsall. Legette, ADP 138, Pearsall, ADP 147. You should not be letting round one wide receivers like this slip so far down draft boards. You know what you shouldn't do? If you're watching the stream and you haven't signed up for Underdog Fantasy, you need to rectify that decision immediately.
This episode is made possible by Underdog Fantasy, and Underdog Fantasy is the leader in best ball. When you go to join an Underdog Fantasy best ball draft, it fills very quickly. Especially now, it's Best Ball Mania season, baby. Best Ball Mania 5. I can't believe they're at Best Ball Mania 5 already. $15 million in prizes. They're giving out $15 million with $1.5 million to first. Playing in best ball leagues makes you better. It helps train you on player value and strategy. And Underdog offers a lot more than just best ball contests. They offer pick'ems. My new favorite, the golf pick'ems. But they have the NBA pick'ems, baseball pick'ems going on throughout the offseason. Hit the pick'ems, back to best ball, hit the pick'ems. So use promo code Underworld. Promo code Underworld gets you a 50% deposit bonus up to $250. So they've increased the maximum deposit bonus. It was $100. Now it's up to $125. When you get the Underdog app, use promo code Underworld and go draft your ass off.
We have some mean comments in the chat talking about how I don't understand some funny references from the chat. The chat, I apologize. I don't know if that's a movie or TV reference. I don't really watch many movies. I don't watch much TV outside of football. I apologize to the good people. Gerard Dean says, give us a Pearsall take. My Pearsall take is that he's currently buried. He projects for basically zero work. That being said, Ayuk can legally get injured. Kittle can legally get injured. McCaffrey can legally get injured. We've seen these guys get hurt in the past. I still think guys like Deebo Samuel are trade candidates. We just saw Juwan Jennings get a slight extension. Wasn't massive money, but the idea that they have Juwan Jennings extended, it's a lot of money / draft capital tied up in an offense. Brandon Ayuk's looking for an extension. He's much more versatile. I think they'd rather keep Ayuk and watch Deebo walk. If anything like that happens, suddenly Pearsall's projection can change massively. So the fact that Pearsall goes at pick 147 when it's a top 5 offense and he's a guy that can get open on pretty much every play, I don't really know why we should let him fall that far. So, I mean, last time I checked, he was my highest exposure receiver. GDLT thinks Ayuk and Shanahan, they've never been on the same page. They think Ayuk is a diva and that he's on his way out and that Pearsall takes his role. I do think Pearsall and Ayuk have much more in common than Deebo and Pearsall, but I do think that Ayuk's just a more versatile receiver. But again, this is what's fun is that we'll probably know who's right in the next few weeks. The post-June 1 cut will either happen, not happen. The post-June 1 trade happens, not happens. I am back on the clock. We've got Jameson Williams falling half a round past ADP. I might just take him unless anyone in the chat has an issue with that. I think he's got pretty good 1 week upside. I've got some strength already with Collins, Del Godwin at receiver. I think we could add to it. We've got Bijan and Henry at running backs. We already have 2 strong running backs. We just added Jameson Williams. I'm feeling pretty good about this team so far. In the chat as well, if you have any other players you want takes on aside from guys like Pearsall, just let me know. I'm happy to go 1 for 1 and give those takes. Looking at this range right now, we've got Najee Harris went off the board at pick 92. Jalen Warren's ADP is 91 as well. These guys go in a similar range. And I've talked a little bit about why I prefer Jalen Warren on Twitter, but I know that not everyone follows me on Twitter, and that's perfectly okay. What I really like about Jalen Warren specifically is the schedule lines up so much better for him compared to Najee Harris. Here's the 3 final games for the Steelers in terms of weeks 15, 16, 17, the fantasy playoffs. At Philadelphia, at Baltimore, host Kansas City. I think the Steelers lose all 3. I think they're trailing all 3 games. Jalen Warren was 5th in the NFL last year among running backs and receptions. Grinder back Najee Harris at the Eagles, at the Ravens versus the Chiefs. That does not feel like optimal Najee Harris game script. So I've definitely taken a lot more of Jalen Warren because of that. We're back on the clock. One thing that I wish is that Jaden Daniels didn't have the same bye week as Anthony Richardson. It'd be so fun to just have 2 ultra mobile quarterbacks. I don't really have a take here on who to grab. We can go pretty much any direction at this point. We've got an unstacked Richardson. Hopefully we can rectify that soon. We're just going to take Cortland Sutton. It's not sexy, but someone has to catch passes there. Maybe we can have nope, just kidding. We won't have a backdoor Bo next stack because his bye week is the same as Anthony Richardson. That is very, very fun. We've got the chat. Best case scenario, Ayuk's traded, Deebo gets hurt, Pearsall to the moon. I think that's reasonable. I think that could happen. My take on Marvin Mims. I've taken some Marvin Mims. Let me screen share again. So if we look at these Broncos ADPs, I just took Sutton at pick 100. And if we scroll down a little bit, I think Troy Franklin goes 162. Mims goes 170. Franklin seems a bit expensive for a 4th round rookie receiver. Anyone watching the stream knows I like Troy Franklin. I think it's a good profile in a vacuum. But if it 1 to 2 rounds earlier, I can get dudes with round 1 draft capital like Xavier Legette and Ricky Pearsall, I would just do that. I think Mims is fine. I really don't know how this Broncos pecking order is going to shake out. I do think at least one of them smashes ADP, I think, but I could be wrong there. The guy that I've really been targeting is I've started to take a lot of Javonte Williams. Sean Payton, every year of his offense, the running backs get heavily targeted. We saw that last year where Samaje Perine quietly had 50 catches. Javonte Williams also had almost 50 catches. McLaughlin might get some pass catching work. I think Audric Estime is an interesting prospect as well. I just struggle with there's probably receiver value. I don't know how else to say it other than I think Sutton at wide receiver 49, Franklin wide receiver 72, Mims wide receiver 75, Josh Reynolds wide receiver 101. I think at least one of these guys beats his ADP by a decent amount. I don't know who it is. And I don't know if there's 1 week game breaking upside with any of these guys. Like I don't know if Courtland Sutton can score 23 fantasy points in this offense. I think he could score like 16 in a week. That probably cracks your best ball lineup and you're happy with it, but it's not special. So it's just kind of difficult for me to see exactly how these guys are putting you over the top. I'm learning that Alex Keaton was not actually the guy's name. It's from an 80s TV show played by the great Michael Fox. Thank you. All right, we got another question in the chat. Your take on Deshaun Watson knocking the rust off finally and the Browns ending up second place in the division. I took the Browns 6-1 to win the division about a month ago. I don't know how I feel about that. I think that bet is just totally fine. I don't think I got closing line value on it. I don't think it moved in against me. I think the Browns, I just kind of thought, hey, if I need a 1 in 7 chance ultimately to make money in the long run on bets like this, I think there's a 1 in 7 chance Watson's back, at least. I think with Watson, I don't really think he's back for real life. I think there's a very slight chance, but the window's closing. He's just looked so bad the past 2 years. That being said, for fantasy football, it's a different story. Now, we're going to pull up on Player Profiler Deshaun Watson's player page. We're going to make my pick. I'm about to be back on the clock, and then we'll look at Watson because I think for fantasy, he's awesome. Now, I think everyone knows out there I like to stack. I've talked many times about how I don't like Adonai Mitchell. I think he's a bad pick in a vacuum. Lower pass volume offense. I think he might be third in targets behind Pittman and Downs. Richardson's mobile. Jonathan Taylor. He's going to get goal line work. That being said, Adonai Mitchell, round 2 draft capital. We're going to stack him with Richardson. We took him at the 117, right around his ADP. Feeling good about that. We now have Richardson at quarterback, Bijan and Henry at running back. We have 6 receivers. We built a ton of depth there. We don't have to worry. We got Nico Collins, Tank Dell from the Texans, Chris Godwin from the Bucks, Jamison Williams from the Lions. We have Courtland Sutton from the Broncos and the Colts rookie Adonai Mitchell. At tight end, we have Evan Engram. I pick again in 4 picks at the 124. Trevor Lawrence's ADP is about half a round earlier. I think he would be a fun guy. We can get him stacked with Evan Engram. We can just lock down quarterback. I think that would be an interesting one there. We'll make this pick and then we'll talk a little bit about Deshaun Watson. You know what? We're gonna do Deshaun Watson right now. All right, here we go. Three picks till I'm on the clock. I'm looking at Deshaun Watson's player page right now on Player Profiler. I'm sharing it with the good people. He played in basically 5 games last year. 1 game he left super early after 5 pass attempts. In his other 5 games, he was the quarterback 5, the quarterback 27, the quarterback 10, the quarterback 9, the quarterback 14. Basically, he was a top 14 quarterback in 4 of his 5 starts. He was a top 10 quarterback in 3 of his 5 starts for fantasy. Deshaun Watson, horrific passer. Probably no longer a good NFL quarterback. Pretty good in fantasy football. Deshaun Watson, I'm looking right now, he goes at ADP 164, quarterback 21. I think you should probably go at like quarterback 14, quarterback 15. We're back on the clock, and Trevor Lawrence just fell into our laps. We are now going to stack Richardson with Adonai Mitchell and Trevor Lawrence with Evan Engram. These are not the sexiest stacks. We have some other correlation. We've got Collins and Dell from the Texans. Week 17 correlated with Derrick Henry. It's a single entry I think at this point, we want the Texans offense to be good. We want the Colts to be good, and we want the Jaguars to be good as well. I'm feeling all right about how we're starting to build a nice little stable here of quarterback room looks strong, receiver room looks strong. We have two awesome running backs. Evan Ingram is not a bad tight end. Another question in the chat. let me take a sip of water. We got to clear the throat. I think me getting angry and almost rage quitting when CJ Stroud got taken to stack with Diggs, boring when I had Collins and Dell. That really got to me. Now, my Brian Robinson take, let's look at the Commanders on Underdog, because I think this helps. So we can see that when we look at the Commanders, Terry McLaurin goes to pick 55, Jaden Daniels pick 104. I think McLaurin's fine at his ADP. I really like Jaden Daniels. I think he's basically Anthony Richardson potentially. And then we get Brian Robinson at 111, Austin Ekeler 117. That's a decision point. It used to be Ekeler went ahead, and I disagreed. I was taking Brian Robinson as my preferred pick, and I think the market has it right. And I think Robinson's a decent pick at 111. Brian Robinson is the goal line back. He's much bigger than Austin Ekeler. Ekeler signed for $8 million over 2 years, but it's only $4 million guaranteed. Eckler's like 29 years old. He's small. He didn't look good last year. Ekeler basically signed a 1 year, $4 million deal. That's backup running back money. Brian Robinson has third round draft capital. He was a beast in college. He had a 35 catch season at one point in college that people don't realize. Like Robinson was good last year as well. 36 catches for 368 receiving yards. Like Brian Robinson can do it all. Ekeler could get hurt, and then Robinson could be a bell cow. I think he's a pretty good pick. I think these running backs are going to have pretty good efficiency because of Jaden Daniels and his rushing upside. It's like how the Ravens running backs always average around 5 yards a carry because of Lamar's legs, keeping the linebackers and the defense honest. So I think Robinson can have 250 pretty efficient carries. He can get some pass game work. Anything happens to Ekeler, and you're feeling pretty good about that. So Brian Robinson, I think, is a reasonable pick there. I've taken some of him. Another in the chat. Browns defense is no joke. The Browns defense is no joke. No healthy Nick Chubb. I think they give Watson lots of opportunities. Yeah, I would agree. Like I said, I'm taking a lot of Deshaun Watson in these early best ball drafts. We've got 7 picks till we're back on the clock. At this point, we're probably going to want to start firing up more running backs. And we're going to want to look for at least one more tight end. I really like Pat Freiermuth. I think he could be the number 2 from the Steelers for pass catching in terms of receptions, where George Pickens looks like the clear one. I like Roman Wilson. I think most people watching the stream probably like third-round rookie Roman Wilson out of Michigan. He's a good player. He's fine, but he's a third-round pick. I think Pat Freiermuth might be better than him. And, of course, thank you, stream. I think Rhett Krug. Oh, boy. We're not going to pronounce that name. That's a tough to pronounce underdog screen name. He just sniped Freiermuth. There were other tight ends on the board that had better prospects. Thank you, sir. Chat, I'm looking right now at Josh. Oh, God. Hopefully BNBA doesn't start taking guys. I've got Josh Downs and Ricky Pearsall. Josh Downs makes a double stack, but it's a lower volume pass offense. Ricky Pearsall, as I mentioned, I can't draft enough of. He's my highest exposure receiver. Oh, boy. Chat, if anyone has a takeaway in, oh, God, do I think I can get both and just close out receiver and take 8 receivers and be done? Can I get both Downs and Pearsall? Oh, in the chat, Gerard Dean said, Pearsall, let's go. We're going to really sweat this one out. We took Pearsall. This is going to be a clear 8 receiver build, no more. I have 1 receiver left in the stockpile. Josh Downs is now the highest remaining player on the draft board. 4 picks left. Will I get Josh Downs more than a round after ADP for the double stack? We're going to queue up Jalen Wright. I think he's a great pick. So that's a good consolation prize if we miss out on the double stack. Jalen Wright is ultra fast with some pass catching ability. He plays on the Dolphins. He was their 4th round pick. Some people think he's buried. I think it's a gold mine for fantasy. One, if not two, Dolphins running backs are probably going to get there in fantasy each week. It's just a fantasy points bonanza. This was the second highest scoring offense in the NFL last year, the Dolphins. Raheem Mostert's 32 years old, coming off the highest workload of his career. And then we have Devon Achane, awesome player, but he could get hurt. His play style is not necessarily conducive to staying healthy, but I love Devon Achane. I've taken a lot of Achane, and my flag plan's kind of been that it's a bad pick to take 32-year-old Raheem Mostert when he ran so pure on touchdowns. The decision's easy. Jalen Wright just got taken. We're getting Josh Downs over a round after ADP. Hallelujah. Folks, we lost CJ Stroud, but we just got the double stack of Josh Downs. I'm feeling very good about that. Our receiver room is complete with Nico Collins, Tank Dell, both of the Texans, Chris Godwin, Jameson Williams, Cortland Sutton. We took round one rookie receiver, Ricky Pearsall at pick 141. And then we have double stacked Anthony Richardson with Adonai Mitchell and Josh Downs. I think to make a lot of money, I guess what we're hoping is towards the end of the year, Michael Pittman gets hurt and Richardson has a couple rushing touchdowns and throws a passing touchdown to each of Adonai Mitchell and Josh Downs. A man like me can dream. Let's hope this is it. I'm not quite sure if I'll be able to take him. We'll see. I don't want to jinx myself. We'll talk about it. So week 17, the Colts travel to face the Giants. I think they're going to blow out the Giants. And the Giants have an intriguing pass-catching running back for when they get blown out in Tyrone Tracy. His ADP is 180. We're going to put him in the queue since I pick at 165 and 172. I think I can get him 172. We're going to take him out of the queue. It's bad luck, actually. We're going to take him out of the queue. I think we can get Tyrone Tracy at 172. His ADP is 180. Then we have a nice little correlation there. We're just going to start thinking about that one. I'm up in 7 picks. In the chat where we got a great question here. What is the most you'd be willing to reach to complete a stack? That the short answer, it depends. The long answer is it really depends on where you are in the draft room. So I think a good example of this is if we look at the Chiefs, Kelsey ADP 37, Mahomes ADP 48, Hollywood Brown ADP 58, Xavier Worthy ADP 60. If you're reaching within like half a round on some of those guys to complete a Chiefs stack, I think that's A-okay. Get the Chiefs. That's an awesome offense. The Texans, if you have Collins and Dell and CJ Stroud's ADP is 53 and you take him at 47, 48, half a round early, I think that's great. It's just going to kind of depend on how the draft falls to you. I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm taking a guy a few picks early. I can't complete my stack, or else like no one would ever complete those stacks. So I think like half a round earlier on in the draft is totally fine. As you get later, I think you can go 1 to 2 rounds. I think you can go 1 round once you're hitting like round 8, 9, 10. And then I think once you're hitting like the true later rounds, like 12, 13, 14, if you're going 1.5, 2 rounds early, if you're anxious, you're desperate, I wouldn't do it. I would try to wait and just take them half a round before or at ADP or after ADP like I did with Josh Downs. But that's kind of how I view it. Is like, I don't think it's the worst idea ever. Just to be like, you know what? I really want this guy. I took him and I feel good about it. Now we're back on the clock. I think I'm going to take Ty Chandler. We need running backs. We only have Bijan and Derrick Henry. Vikings running back Ty Chandler. What I like is Aaron Jones has never really had a super high workload. Ty Chandler is kind of alone as the backup on the depth chart. There's nobody else there. So I'm feeling good about that. We're up in 5 picks. There are... Son of a bitch. Who took what? Someone just, what? I was about to queue up Tyrone Tracy. Are you kidding me? Someone just took Tyrone Tracy nearly 2 rounds early. Completely naked, unstacked. They have no Colts players. And what? They have no Colts players. They have no Giants players. Jim Babe 7946. You are on my hate list. I do not know what. This is why sometimes you can't stream a $35 single entry. Wow. The harsh conditions here. I can't even, okay. You know what? Folks, it doesn't look like we're going to have the Colts and New York Giants correlation. We're going to try this. We're going to try this again. The Jaguars play the Titans in a divisional game in week 17. Will we be able to take a Titan later in this draft? Where is their tight end? Chigo Okonkwo. His ADP is 195. We're going to put him in the queue so we don't forget about him. He could be my second tight end to pair with Evan Engram. Let's hope that doesn't slip away. Oh boy. We'll keep him in the queue. No one's going to take him at this point. We've got Hunter Henry falling a full round after ADP. I only have the 3 running backs, Bijan, Henry, Chandler. We're full at receiver. We're full at quarterback. I think I'm going to take Bucky Irving here. Now, Bucky Irving is small and slow. He's like 190 pounds. He ran in the mid 4.5s. That being said, he was a mega producer in college. I'm going to pull up Bucky Irving quickly. Let's see if I can do that on stream. We're up against the clock. So Bucky Irving, let's talk about why I like him. So the past 2 years at Oregon, sophomore 2 years ago, 1,058 rushing yards, 31 catches, 300 receiving yards. We like that. All purpose. And then as a junior, it gets better. 186 carries, 1,200 rushing yards, 56 catches, over 400 receiving yards. That is I kind of feel like he's kind of like a budget Rachaad White. He happens to play with Rachaad White. I don't think Bucky Irving's necessarily the best player out there, but I think he's good enough in all phases of the game. He's small, he's slow, but hey, Kyron Williams was small and slow, and we've seen what he's done. I think if anything happens to Rachaad White, which could, I mean, he had a massive workload last year. He could get banged up this year. I think Bucky Irving's getting all the touches, so I actually feel pretty good about that pick. And I'm really starting to get excited with this roster. I think we might have something here, folks. I think we might have something. I'll repeat it quickly. We've got Anthony Richardson at quarterback. He is stacked with Adonai Mitchell and Josh Downs at receiver. We have Trevor Lawrence as my other quarterback. He is stacked with Evan Engram. At running back, I love my running backs right now. We've got 2 anchors in Bijan Robinson and Derrick Henry. We've got Ty Chandler and Bucky Irving as injury contingent upside guys. I think Chandler might have a little bit of standalone value, though. But either way, we've got Bijan and Henry. Those are the guys I want for the money weeks. One thing I like about Henry is his playoff schedule is awesome for fantasy football. So week 14, Derrick Henry has a bye. We love that. Rest up the big dog for the fantasy playoffs. Then he faces the Giants in week 15. I think they're going to be 2 touchdown favorites. They smash the Giants. Week 16, the Steelers. Could be a muddy divisional game between the Ravens and Steelers, but I do think that the Ravens are going to want to run the ball against the Steelers. I think Henry can still have a pretty good fantasy day. And then we love week 17 versus the Texans, a team that he has historically feasted against. Feasted. It should be a high-scoring affair. So we like that. And then at receiver, Nico Collins and Tank Dell from the Texans correlated with Derrick Henry. Chris Godwin. We got a little bit of Buccaneers, same team correlation with Bucky Irving. We got Jameson Williams from the Lions. Cortland Sutton just hanging out there, and Ricky Pearsall hanging out there. All right, let's look. And what? Wait, whoa. Chigoziem Okonkwo, unstacked, just went son of a gun. He just went more than a round early. It looks like we will not have Titans correlation, folks. We still need tight ends. Okay. So Juwan Johnson has the same bye week 12 as Evan Engram. We're going to take Jonnu Smith here. We do need another tight end. What I like about Jonnu Smith is Jonnu Smith had nearly as good of a season as Kyle Pitts last year. He plays on the Dolphins, where it's Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and that's about it. Receiving wise, like Odell Beckham's pretty washed. I think Jonnu Smith is kind of quietly a guy that could have a lot of receptions. I believe he had almost 60 catches last year. I think there's like 7, 8, 9 touchdown upside for him in this Dolphins offense. We didn't get Jalen Wright earlier. I do want some Dolphins exposure. Why not take Jonnu Smith super late? We could always stop at 2 tight ends. We could go with a third. I'm kind of open. Chat, help me out there if we want. If we're going to take either, I guess, 9 receivers or 3 tight ends. I'm seeing people in the chat asking about Colby Parkinson. We've got 2 Colby Parkinson mentions about if he's undervalued, if he's the starting tight end. I honestly don't know what to do, folks. I'll be completely honest. I don't know what my read on this. So when we look at the ADPs, is Higbee a lot lower? I always forget. Here, we'll type in Rams. There we go. So Colby Parkinson, his ADP is 214 for the Rams. Davis Allen's ADP is 215. Tyler Higbee's 216. I'm truly not quite sure what's going on there. The reason I'm hesitant to take too much Parkinson is just because I think Higbee will be back from the ACL tear before the season ends. And I think when he's healthy, Stafford likes him. This Rams coaching staff likes him. So I think it could be like this ugly situation where Parkinson or Allen gets a lot of the regular season for fantasy touches in weeks 1 through 14. And then Higbee starts to be fully ramped up and gets more of the high value receptions and whatnot late in the season. That's kind of my fear there. Where we're going to be back on the clock. We only have a few seconds. I'm looking at tight ends. I don't really like what I see. I'm going to queue up Demarcus Robinson and take him here while we're talking about the Rams, because I think Demarcus Robinson is wide receiver 3 for the Rams, where it's Cooper Kupp, who's had some injury issues, Puka Nacua, who's awesome. He's young. I think Robinson's going to be in their 3 receiver sets. I think they want to play a lot of 3 receiver sets, especially with the state of that tight end room. And I think Demarcus Robinson might be kind of good. He actually had a really nice stretch last year with Matthew Stafford. I'm going to pull up player profiler quickly while we have a little time before my final pick. So if we look at Demarcus Robinson, let's share player profiler. We're going to load Demarcus Robinson. This is PPR. It's not half PPR, so it's a touch different. Looks like my player profiler froze. Try that again. We want Demarcus Robinson. It's taking a second to load. We'll go back to Underdog until that loads. Anyway, Demarcus Robinson had he had a nice stretch to end last year. Here we go. We put up his game logs. So last year we had 15.5 fantasy points, 13.5 fantasy points, 14.5 fantasy points, 20 fantasy points, 13 fantasy points. That was weeks 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Basically, for the fantasy stretch and fantasy playoffs, Demarcus Robinson was giving you fully usable weeks over and over and over again. And I really like that. We're going to take him. We have 9 receivers. We're going to have to take a 5th running back now. Let's start to look at who we want. I think for Thunder and Lightning purposes, I don't think it's the worst idea to take Keaton Mitchell. I generally don't handcuff in redraft leagues. Best ball is a little different because best ball, especially during the regular season, you really just don't want zeros. Let's say that Derrick Henry misses 1 week in weeks. Let's say Derrick Henry misses week 6. If I told you that Derrick Henry is going to be healthy for the entire season, except for week 6, and I said, which late round running back is most likely to benefit your roster now in best ball? I would say Keaton Mitchell, because in week 6, Keaton Mitchell would probably be the guy that goes in there. And you might be like, well, week 6, bad example, Josh, because maybe Keaton Mitchell's recovering from his injury. Then I'd say, okay, then it would be Rasheen Ali, their 5th round pick. He was a sprinter at Marshall? Troy? Where was he at Marshall? Yeah, Marshall product. There we go. Yeah. He was at Marshall. He was a sprinter at Marshall. Rasheen Ali, super fast, catches passes. I really like him. So I'd say that if we knew Henry missed week 6, that one of Keaton Mitchell or Rasheen Ali would pop. Derrick Henry misses week 11. One of those guys pops. That's one thing I like about the handcuffing in best ball is that you're just trying not to take zeros. And if for some reason Henry misses a week, sure, like I I'm not drafting Keaton Mitchell or Rasheen Ali saying, I hope Derrick Henry misses 10 weeks and then this guy pops. But if Henry misses a week or two here or there, one of these guys is probably going to immediately fill in the gaps and kind of keep my team afloat for a week or two. I do hope and expect Derrick Henry to be ready for the fantasy playoffs. I am not drafting Derrick Henry in the third round if I thought he was going to be missing significant time. I don't really have a preference here. Keaton Mitchell, Rasheen Ali. I think it's half PPR. Keaton Mitchell, will leave him since he's more the pure runner, whereas Rasheen Ali is a little more pass catching. I see GDLT in the chat says Rasheen Ali has that dog in him. Does the chat have a take on this? We kind of take either of these guys. Will Shipley's a nice fun one as well. We could get some Eagles exposure. I think we're just gonna go back to 2 Ravens running backs after I just talked for 2 minutes about why handcuffing's not bad in best ball. The clock's expiring. It looks like Keaton Mitchell is on this team. And I'm feeling pretty good about that. People sometimes get squeamish with handcuffing, and I think it's actually a pretty good method for these best ball drafts where your final pick, you take a handcuff and you kind of see what happens. We're going to review this team one more time. If there's anyone in the chat that was drafting and wants a last second team review, if they were one of the drafters in here, let me know. Happy to break down their team and roast them. Anyway, drafts completed. The Greyhound. Let's check this team out. There we go. We've got Anthony Richardson stacked with Josh Downs, Adonai Mitchell. We've got Trevor Lawrence stacked with Evan Engram. And we have 2 Texans receivers and Nico Collins and Tank Dell. We've got the correlation for week 17 with Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell with the Texans. We have 2 Buccaneers players in backup running back Bucky Irving and receiver Chris Godwin. We have Bijan Robinson. Obviously, that was our first pick. I love Bijan Robinson. Ty Chandler rounds out our running back room to go with Bijan, Henry, Irving, and Keaton Mitchell. Other receivers, we have a Jameson Williams, Cortland Sutton, Ricky Pearsall, and DeMarcus Robinson. And then our second tight end is Jonnu Smith. We got a quick question in the chat before we head out. Thoughts on Bub Means being the true number 2 for the Saints? I don't think they were impressed with A.T. Perry, hence why they spent draft capital on Means. Yeah, that's a fine take that Bub means they didn't like A.T. Perry. I'd say Rashid Shaheed, though, is the number 2 there. Rashid Shaheed had over 700 yards this past season. I think he was very efficient. I think he's the clear number 2 there. Folks, I'm Josh Larky. This is the Dominator. We just streamed a $35 single entry Greyhound. Hopefully we can win $30,000 and that this stream works out well for us. I'm glad you're all here. This was a great way to begin my Thursday morning. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at JLarkyTweets. Go to playerprofiler.com. I have an article up on why the Chargers are the most undervalued team overall for Underdog Fantasy. And my pinned tweet on Twitter is my win-loss predictions for all 32 teams. Make sure you are checking that out. Thank you so much for being here, folks. This was fun. I'm Josh Larky. This is the Dominator, Underdog Fantasy Player Profiler. See you next week.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.